Just now discussed about the topic one is about the complexity of the packaged deals and also the trend, the reasons behind. I think maybe in the two, maybe we can discuss about the other special factors because I think both of us and all the audience have already found the big contract deal value. It's 12 billion US dollars. Yeah, I admit 100 million US dollars as can be received by Hengrui now. But and the 12 billion USD is for the whole deal and just possible the possibility that they the whole deal. But it's still a big deal, I think. And I just want to say, aside from the inflation, what other factors contributed this rising valuation? Yeah, because I think maybe even just 5 years ago, the value for each project is so high. But nowadays, the value for projects increased a lot, just several times than before. Why? I just want to know or discuss with you the reasons behind.
Yeah, yeah, that's a complicated question. This is one of those we could probably look at it from sort of a US European point of view versus sort of a Chinese point of view. I'm going to start. Let's look at it first from the point of view. And again, I'm just going to repeat what I said in the if you look at the that are being licensed today within the past, let's say 6, 9, 12 months, the candidates that are coming out of China, they're just really good candidates. They're just really innovative. They're novel antibody drug candidates. They're specifics, they're tri-specifics, which is not a trivial thing to do. They're just whatever, I don't know exactly how to measure innovation, but these are just drug candidates that are just much more innovative than drug candidates that were coming out of China previously. And if they're more innovative, and if they hit that sweet spot in terms of, the right indication, the right patient population, a safety and efficacy profile that's reasonable and not superior to what's already out there for some of these indications, then it stands to reason that companies are going to pay more because those drug candidates are worth more. They're just simply better. They're more innovative. They're safer. They're more effective. Whatever the case may be.
Okay.
And I don't think you that. You would know better than I. But I don't think you could have made that statement about drug candidates coming out of China, let's say 5 years ago, because I've worked with companies in the past from, China, South Korea, to a lesser extent, Japan. And a lot of those companies were focused on established mechanisms of action, established modalities, and trying to come up with something just a little bit better than
Okay.
what's already out there.
We call that me better.
Me better. Exactly. Simply not to be as valuable to a multinational company that has the resources and the risk appetite for something that's going to be much more innovative.
Okay.
And so these are drug candidates that are just simply
Okay.
they're just better. They're more innovative. They're just better. And I think to go back to your question, what size is rising? And I don't have any data to support the statement, but if they are right, I mean, we know the number of transactions is increasing, but if it's also true that the deal value is rising, then I think that's just a reflection on the quality of the drug candidates that are coming out of companies like Hengrui. It's as simple as that. So that's sort of at least my view, the China point of view, the US/EU point of view. My being American, I'm from New York. I don't necessarily like to say
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I
You know,
see. I see that.
I was born off that bridge. Look, a lot of U.S. companies, a lot of companies, out of the bubble in 2020, raised a lot of capital. We've all seen the data, right? A lot of venture capital went into the market in 2020, then it sort of dropped off. A lot of that cash was spent on drug candidates that perhaps are not as innovative. Perhaps they're, perhaps they're somewhat me better in some cases. Maybe they are innovative, but their commercial thesis is not correct. Maybe their board is, or their investors are looking for valuations that are just not reasonable. And they're looking for unreasonable valuations because they invested all this money in 2020. Now they want the 500 up front for one drug candidate as opposed to 12, and they're not getting it. And so I think that may be part of the dynamic here is that, if I'm GSK, to go back case study,
Okay.
and if I'm in license something for COPD, I frankly, I'll speak for myself. If I'm GSK, geographically speaking, I don't care whether drug candidate,
Oh, yeah.
if it comes from China, if it comes from Belgium, if it comes from Boston, for all intents and purposes, it makes no difference to me. At the end of the day, it's got to be a good drug candidate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if it costs me that plus all 12, and the company happens to be here and not there, well, fine. I'm a global company. It makes no difference to me. So I think there's a very interesting sort of global dynamic here that we're seeing it unfold in our eyes. And to sort of summarize a long-winded answer to your question, at the end of the day, from a big pharma multinational in licensing point of view, it's got to be a good drug candidate.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. And a company like GSK has resources to pay for it.
Okay.
And if the candidate happens to come out of China, well then, so be it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the basement for the each deal is itself. And yeah, the project is good, and it have the good efficacy and safety, and it's just a match the unmet medical needs. And the value, its value can be very. If it's me too or even me better, maybe the value will be very limited. And yeah, I think it's a good answer to the questions from the many people, because many Chinese people it have the voice in innovative assets, have been sold out with a low value. So they said, oh, it's not good for China. But in my opinion, because the fair, at least most of it is of the deals are very fair, and the licensor have the right to choose to deal or not.
Right.
Yeah, I think it cannot be used for on all the deals. I think, but I still there are some other one is maybe in 5 or 10 years ago, there are not so many real innovative projects in China. So at that, not only the multinational company, Chinese pharmaceutical companies, they don't believe the Chinese pharmaceutical biotech companies can do the real innovative work. At that time, maybe it will limit the value of the project, because they said, oh, the deal with you, but I have the big risk in the future, so the value should be a little low than the usual. But now, with the development of the innovation in China, more and more successful case taking place in China. So, and I think more multinational companies they said, okay, even it is from China, China have the real capability to do the innovation. So they should have the value for, and just
Yeah.
not just like you said, if the project is okay, we will pay. But for the company, maybe because they have become more and more confident about their project and their innovation. The other reason is more and more includes the BD persons come back from the Western countries. They know how to do the negotiation with the multinational company, so they can just hold them just charge the fair price for their assets. I think that is also very important. Because we read the information from the internet or newspapers, that because in the Western countries, the situation also changed. And nowadays, many innovative projects is not from the multinational company. I think most of them is also from the biotech company.
Oh
So
yeah.
because the efficient in biotech company is much higher than the multinational company. And then nowadays, the economy situation in the West is not as good as before, at least influenced by some different factors. So they to fund the projects different. I think the project in China is just satisfied their needs, and I think that might be another reason because it's just influence our life and each company's development.
Yeah, to sort of say what you just said, but a different way. I mean, drug development is all risk. Quantifying risk, accepting risk, shifting risk to somebody else.
Yeah.
And what all this tells me is that there are some Chinese companies that are basically willing to accept more risk. So chasing novel targets, working with, different modalities that perhaps they've never worked before, et cetera, et cetera. So they're accepting more risk. If they accept more risk, then there's a greater potential for reward at the end of the day, because risk and reward are related. And so that is another way to sort of think exactly what you just said. There are companies and their investors that are willing to accept more risk with the understanding that they may wind a much better transaction at the end of all this. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully, which is why, if you focus on me betters, there's an argument to be made that that's actually a riskier strategy. Yes, it may be an established mechanism of action. Yes, it may be novel, maybe an established target. Yes, you're using the same modality, you're just using something a little bit better. Some people might say, well, it's less risky. And, I would look at that and say, well, are you sure? Because it's going to be much more difficult to raise capital to chase that. It's going to be more difficult to license. If you get it all the way to market, you're going to be fourth to market, fifth to market, now entry coming in a relatively shorter period of time relative to your other competitors that were already on the market ahead of you. So, we may be in a period, to your point, that companies recognize that they actually have to accept more development risk in order to get that reward later on, because being a me is potentially a riskier strategy, which sounds counterintuitive, but that may be the situation.
The risk is not only from the development, the project's development, but also from the others. Because in the US buy and US buy taking place in months. Yeah, we talked in that in the US. Some representative from the company told me they are worried about the geopolitical factors between the China and the US. And then they don't know what will happen so they are willing to write or if they want to license the right of the project, want to have the global right, and they just avoid any connection between China because they think it might be a little helpful for the development of the project in the future. I think that is also very important, especially for the company. They will just develop the early stage when it's matched when it's more matched. For example, phase 4, phase 3, they will just license it out again to multinational company, especially in the US. That is very typical worries for the there are a lot of these kind of the company in the Europe. They licensed out the project in early stage, for example, close the IND or phase 1, and then they will develop them by themselves and sell it out to some company in the US. But if the company have some Chinese factors, and they worried it will influence their deals in the future. Okay.
Yeah, we could probably spend another hour talking about the U.S. political situation, which I don't understand, and I don't know where it's going.
Okay. I just think about that. Okay,
It's but
because we are open discussion, and yeah.
Yeah. But all joking aside, you're raising a very good and very valid point, which is that, our industry, we're not a fast moving industry, right? Drug development takes years. It takes years for generic entry. We're an industry that's used to planning and thinking about things in, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 10-year cycles. And so when you have all this unpredictability in arguably the largest and most attractive commercial market on the planet, it creates all sorts of questions like you're suggesting. If I'm a company, do I have to move to Switzerland or Ireland so that I'm no longer viewed as a quote unquote Chinese company so that I can license something to Pfizer in New York? What if we start going into, price controls in the US? Although that's a separate discussion. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But anyway, I mean, there's just a lot of uncertainty, which makes it, to your point, very to think about. Who am I going to license? I'm going to finish my phase 2 trial in December. I want to run my out licensing process next year. If I can't license it to a US company because I'm a Chinese company, then what do I do?
Yeah.
That's a really tough problem to have.
Yeah.
It really
Yes.
is.
Especially.
No. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just now we mentioned about the Chinese factors in the project. And nowadays, many yeah, I actually called me. Reminded me another things because the Nuco, you know that name? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
Nuco is very popular in China, and many pharmaceutical companies they set up the Nucos it's a very good early stage, and
yeah.
it's set up the bridge to with the cooperation with the big pharma. And I just want to ask because the Nuco the yeah because we have both of us admitted the advantage of Nuco. Why is a multinational company they prefer over Nuco? Why? Because they have already just say for example in this case study GSK pick up to the project and especially 11 in early stage. It
Right.
sounds they can just pick up this that stage project into a new array and develop them. So it will be very clear and will not influence the others. So in your opinion, why they don't just use the Nuco structure and choose the packaged deal?
That's a great question. And I was just looking. I posted something about a week ago where BMS, Bristol Myers Squibb, they took I'm not sure exactly how many drug candidates, but they took a number of drug candidates and they spun them out into a new company, and Bain Capital invested in that company. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if BMS invested cash as well. I don't know what percentage they own, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that it's if multinational that let's say they're not interested in, they're less important strategically, but they're good candidates. If they can spin them out into newcos, attract capital, bring in a new management team, and then that company, develops drug candidates. I think we need more of that. Now, if I'm GSK, why don't I create a newco
Yeah,
or a joint venture?
yeah,
Set up a company in Switzerland in there from external, get a management team in there, and GSK just sits on the board and they wait. Why don't they do that? Well, I think it could be a couple of reasons. One, if I'm the licensee, and again, we don't know how this is being structured between GSK and Hengrui, but
mm,
if I'm GSK, I have essentially full and complete control over all 12 programs, right? I have the people, I have the expertise, I have the resources, I know the service providers. I know I'm very confident if I'm what to do, how to do it, what I need to do, who I need to work with, and I can do whatever I want within reason, right? So one reason is that the licensee, generally has complete control. They don't have to worry about a board of directors that has all these investors that says, well, wait a minute, we need to have an exit in 2 years because I invested, 1 million Series A preferred. They don't have that situation. It's a nice, clean situation. They have full control. And then the second reason, is one purely of economics. If you have a NewCo, if you hold, say 40%, okay, that's nice. And you have a board seat, okay, that's nice. But at the end of the day, you've got 40%. That's it. You have 40% of the economics. That's it. That's all you have. If I'm in complete control, I have everything, right? I'm sure there's going to be some milestones and royalty flowing back to Hengrui, obviously,
Okay.
but it's not going to be 60%. You know, I'm going to benefit economically tremendously if I'm GSK from these products and selling them myself and marketing them myself and paying Hengrui this little 15% royalty, whatever the case may be. So it just works better for a company like GSK to have complete control and have nearly complete economic benefit from just licensing it as opposed to dropping it into a NewCo. Where I do think the NewCo makes sense, where it definitely makes sense, is for those drug candidates that are no longer important, that are no longer strategic. If GSK today says, you know what, we're not going to do anything in COPD anymore, I'll take all my COPD drug candidates, I'll put them in a NewCo. Bain Capital will invest 500 million and we'll get some royalty if this is marketed. So, if it's strategic, if it's important, I want to own it and control it. If it's no longer strategic and no longer important, then I'll spin it out. The caveat to all this, the caveat is that I'm GSK and I have the cash and the resources to, in theory, develop all 12 compounds, right? If I'm a company that doesn't have to develop 12 candidates, then I may have to create a NewCo because I need to get more capital into the NewCo to be able to develop all 12. So
Okay.
that's a sticking point. It's whether strategic, where's the money going to come from to develop all these?
Okay. Okay, clear. Clear. It's very clear. Yeah. And they could just use the other people's money to develop our
Ex-
project. But the
yeah,
GSK have enough money to do that. They don't have to do the NewCo. But
no,
if they really want to do just develop jointly, maybe the JV is a possible choice. But I think the packaged is still have some the GSK because the Henry will
yeah,
be main person to develop these projects in the soon future. And when they just option point, and then GSK will make the decision. So GSK
yeah.
will have to consider about it. If the result in the future they will just reject it or stop it terminates the cooperation on some of the projects, that will be okay. Yeah, that will much easier than NUCO or JV.
And there are a couple of cases. I mean, just off the top of my head, AstraZeneca outlicensed, I think it was a package of four drug candidates to a company called Conduit. This was a deal probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
But these are four drug candidates. There were no strategic interest to AstraZeneca. They outlicensed them to this company. They gave the company, all the data. There was probably some active ingredients sitting in the basement somewhere. Okay, you can have that too. But if you look at the contract, there's a clawback provision, which basically says that I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but basically it says that if Conduit is in out licensing discussions with a third party, AstraZeneca has the first right to look at the data. They can get the product back.
Okay.
So there's a case where, and I'd be interested to know if Bristol Myers has the same situation with this company they're spinning out with Bain. But that's one way to do it. The way to do it is if there's a drug candidate that is no longer of strategic interest, you can spin it out license it, whatever the case may be, but then include a clause in the contract that says I have the right to look at let's say the phase 2 data, and if I like it, I'll claw it back. So you can out license it. You can out license something that's not strategic. You can spin it out to a NewCo, and include clauses that basically give you the option to get the product back if you change your mind and you like.
Yeah. It's really depend on what's the BD, what's the people said in negotiation. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
If the people, if they have the can dominate the negotiation and they so do everything. Yeah, just like the some, yeah, just like the yeah. For example, yeah, if the project is move forward successfully and we can have the right to we can just take the how maybe the 50 or 60% of the profit, something like that. Well, you can do whatever you can think about. Think
Yeah.
about. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah. Yeah, our discussion have already last around the 1 hour. So I think because Dr. Carlos lived in New York, it's very close to the midnight. So about the consider about the time and just stopped our discussion today. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Carlos. Thanks for sharing your valuable insight. And
My pleasure. It's a very very interesting case study, very interesting transaction.
yeah, I think they must have a lot of questions about these deals. So to our audience, if you have any questions, to let's comments at the bottom of our program, or just reach out via to the WeChat. I believe some of you have my WeChat, or if you don't have, and you can just leave the message on our WeChat group. And we if we received the question from our we can just our discussion with in the soon future in the time of yeah of his convenience. So thank you, Dr. Kels, again.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. See you
Thank
next
you. Good
time.
night. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.